All right, Dalton, let's start off this Big Ten preview with the first school in alphabetical order. And you and I were joking beforehand, kind of crazy that the first school in alphabetical order in the biggest conference in America is an I school. But the Illinois Fighting Illini is our first school right here. One of the bigger surprises in college football last year, finishing 10-3 and number 16 in the final AP poll. That doubled their win total from the previous season, and it was their best final ranking in 23 years in the final AP poll. Not only that, it also matched the program record for most wins in a season as well. And the Fighting Illini brought back a lot of players from that 2024 squad. There are some question marks for the supporting cast around the quarterback and Luke Altmaier, but Dalton, they have a lot of continuity from an already great team.
I think that's the first thing that you look for when you're evaluating a team going into a new season is, okay, how much talent do they have returning from the previous team? And there's very few teams in the country with more than Illinois, right? Their starting quarterback is back. 2 of their top 3 running backs are back. The only question that we really have is at receiver, but almost their entire offensive line, almost their entire defense, the framework of the team last year that had their first 10-win season in a while and their first under Brett Bielema. Really, you look at this team and you talk about possibly a Darkhorse playoff contender just because they have so much talent. I have some questions in the passing game around Luke Altmaier, but when you look at the framework and the foundation of this team, especially on defense, there is a lot to work with this Illinois team.
Yeah, get this stat. So there were 27 players on Illinois last year that played at least 300 snaps. 18 of those 27 players are back in 2025. So a lot of continuity back for the Illinois Fighting Illini. I mentioned before, biggest question mark right now is kind of supporting cast for Luke Altmaier. He lost 2 star receivers in Pat Bryant and Sakari Franklin, both of them to the NFL. Their star running back, Josh McCray, transferred to Georgia this offseason too. And yes, they brought back basically the entirety of their offensive line, but they were only 82nd last year with a 64.9 team pass blocking grade. So you lose your star running back, your top 2 receivers, and your offensive line in terms of pass protection wasn't the best last year either. But Dalton, Luke Altmaier, I've heard a lot of hype around this guy going into the 2025 season. He had a pretty good year for the Fighting Illini last year. What did you see when you broke down his game?
He absolutely did. And what I saw the year before, actually, in 2023, when he was up and down and he struggled, what he's always been is a good passer in a clean pocket, and they run a heavy RPO system now with Illinois that he has a lot of success in, but can you pass protect in front of him? Last year, they did it a lot better than they did in 2023, and he responded with the 3rd best big-time throw rate in the Big Ten. So you're talking about a guy, when he's clean, he's a solid pocket passer. He's got decent mobility. He's a good enough athlete that if you want him to be an occasional threat on a read option, that's fine. But I really, that's what I look at, is he is one of the quarterbacks in the country who is most dependent on his pass protection. If he is protected, he's probably a top 30 to 35 starter in the nation. If he's not, then things really start to plummet. But that's what I see, the improvement in pass protection last year, and his ability to master a lot of the RPO concepts in Illinois' offense really made him an effective threat in most of their games last year. Really, I would say aside from maybe the Penn State game was the one game where they just couldn't pass protect at all, and really nobody could against Penn State and Abdul Carter last year. But that's what you're looking at, is right around a top 30 quarterback when he's left in a clean pocket consistently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned before, he lost his top 2 receivers to the NFL. He did bring in a really good receiver, though, and Hudson Clement transferring in from West Virginia. He was 5th among all Big 12 wide receivers last year with an 82.7 receiving grade over actually the last 2 years, Incredibly reliable hands. He's only dropped 3 of his 77 career catchable targets, and he's caught 63% of his contested targets too. I think he'll have a massive year as a redshirt junior this year. I really love the tape I watched at West Virginia, and now with the quarterback in Luke Altmaier, who might be a little bit of a better passer than he had in Garrett Green at West Virginia, Hudson Clement as a clear #1 option for Illinois this year could have a big year.
Clement's a guy with really good size at 6'3" and about 205, 210, right? Who can make a lot of contested catches. And what you're looking at when you talk about the flaws of West Virginia's quarterbacks over the last couple years is just a lack of accuracy. He's a guy that if you just put the ball somewhere within his catch radius, kind of like it was for even Sakari Franklin and Pat Bryant last year for Illinois, he's going to make those catches. He's going to make tough catches, especially over the middle of the field. So I'm expecting a big year from him, especially as the primary threat in all of those RPOs for Illinois.
Who is the star defensive player for the Fighting Illini next year?
Boy, you got a lot of options because it's a really really good and aggressive defense. They bring a lot of five-man rush. They play a lot of man coverage on the back end as much as any team. But their slot corner, Xavier Scott, is the star of the show. He's one of the best run-defending corners in college football. He's one of the best man-to-man corners in college football. Even late in the year, started to back up and play a little bit of safety for him. So he's got versatility. But when you look at the attitude and the production that Xavier Scott brings to their secondary, again, especially with the super high rate of man-to-man coverage that the Fighting Illini play, you're talking about a star player, a future NFL player in Xavier Scott, and maybe not the only one, especially in that secondary.
Yes, second among all corners over the last 2 years, the 91.9 run defense grade. That's crazy. He's a really, really good player. 6 picks over the last 2 years, too. Big fan of Xavier Scott's game. Dalton, their win total is set at 8.5 right now. What is the bottom line for Illinois? Will they go over or under 8.5? And I want to ask you, is this a sleeper to make the college football playoff a lot like Indiana was last year?
I think they're definitely a playoff sleeper. We're going to learn a lot about them in the first half of the season. They've got a pretty nice runway at the end in the second half, their last 5 games. When you look at within their first 7 games, they've got at Duke, at Indiana, home for USC, and home for Ohio State. I think those 4 games really determine the outcome of their season. If they can get to the second half of their season at 5-2 or maybe even 6-1, then I really think you're talking about a serious playoff threat. But the first half of their schedule stands in the way of that. I do think they're a playoff sleeper. 8.5 is probably a perfect number when you talk about, okay, out of those 4 games, if they lose all of them and win the rest, then they're 8-4. I'm going to take the over. They might float. I could see them floating in that 9-10 win range. They have so much experience coming back. I do have questions at wide receiver and where Illinois really faltered last year in big games that they lost. When you look at the Penn State game, even the Michigan game that they won, can they pass protect against the really good teams? They were able to functionally pass protect against the mid-level teams in the Big Ten. Can they pass protect against even against Duke and Manny Diaz and all those blitzes? Indiana with Mikhail Kamara, Ohio State, who's always got talent on the D-line. If they can pass protect enough, this is absolutely a playoff sleeper. I'll take the over. I think 9-10 wins is really within range.
That's a great call because, Manny Diaz has a blitz a lot, so that Duke gives me a huge one on September 6th, their second game of the season. I'm taking the over on 8.5, though. I think this is at least a 9-3 football team going into next year, as long as last year really wasn't a fluke for Illinois, considering, before that they weren't very good. But they brought back basically everyone from last year's team, and they already went over that win total from last year, too. I think Illinois is going to go over. I don't know if they're going to make the college football playoff, but they could absolutely be a sleeper. And, if we're talking about them as a contender to make the playoff, they're probably going to go over 8-4, right? So I think 9-3 at least is what I'm expecting for Illinois this year. I'm going to take the over for the Illinois Fighting Illini.